If you're familiar with the past works of James Ashcroft, you may be speculating as to whether this follow-up to From the Mind of U. James 1978, aptly named Beauty is Pain, a heavier book in every sense, comes with a wire flex or cyanide pill accompanying each copy. By no means an easy read, but is it a worthwhile one? Before I give my comprehensive answer to that question in the form of my critique, I will say that this is not to be read in one sitting. Provided that Ashcroft succeeds in evoking emotion from you, which is of course the point, then it's kind of like having the opposite of a bottle of antidepressants. If you feel you're not nearly depressed enough these days, and Dr. Wiley's prescription is linked below, then my recommended dosage is 1 depressant per day. One note before I begin my review proper is that many of these short stories are far from short, and one sometimes gets the feeling that a story could have been cut down to its nuts and bolts, or else expanded upon to be full novellas and published as such. And, as with his previous anthology, there is sometimes the feeling of reading a detailed description of a scene from a movie, but where's the rest of it? If you go straight into the next story, you can feel a little like you've changed channels, or eaten an Indian starter, only for your palate suddenly to be confused by a Chinese main course. With that being said, the upside of this is that once again we get a fairly speckled and somewhat eclectic portmanteau. Tonally, at least, Ashcroft starts as he means to go on, with Alone, the story of a man who is inexplicably immortal and has lost track of the passing centuries. It is uncertain when the story is set exactly, but implied that guns are new to the man, who is also never named. Slightly reminiscent of Ashcroft's vampire stories from his previous anthology, Alone sets out to get into the mind of someone who is immortal and sick of it, and does this with outspoken dialogue and little interaction with other humans. Unusual work for a writer who is normally very visual, citing film as his creative inspiration. I would say this extremely nihilistic story succeeds in evoking empathy for a naturally non-relatable character, one who lives forever, and makes you lament the shortcomings of humanity, but does little else. You may wish to take a stroll after, or at least make some tea. The Curse sees a young girl with AIDS living with the belief that mere contact with her will kill on the spot. A dark parable on the stigma still associated with HIV and AIDS, it is uncomfortable reading, but not without merit. As the troubled character seems initially hostile, her need to keep others away being interpreted as her being a total psycho. One theme explored here is the compassion one may feel for someone even if they are hostile and dangerous. Thought-provoking and relevant, and an improvement on the previous offering. The next offering, Family, presents us with a polyamorous family unit, a man, 2 women, and a child no less. They are, for the most part, happy and work well together. So what is the problem with such an arrangement? That it is a secret? That they keep having to move on? That society is not ready to accept it yet? While the point of the story is somewhat obvious, and anyone familiar with U. James 1978 as an internet entity will know his view on this subject, what works is the immersion and the feeling of these being real, emotional and relatable people, and it is important, although, as it's unlikely anyone needing their eyes to be opened on this subject to accept that polyamory works for certain people is unlikely to buy this book. I would be lying if I said this had a happy ending, but one is surely on the horizon. Up next, the 4th selection is a story called Forgiveness. Why, God, why? So anyway, for the creep factor we have Green Eyes, where a crazy bitch obsessed with becoming quote-unquote perfect stalks a woman she sees as possessing this quality, inveigling her way into her life and, well, I will remark that female-on-female rape is a much neglected issue in our media, so I won't object. This story once again shows Ashcroft's obsession with flawed or fanatical characters and pathological criminals. Speaking of which, Home tells the story of Lucy, a troubled teenage runaway who tries to end her life of crime and emotional manipulation and return to her old life. This was a rather painful read, and in a different way to the previous offerings, you feel so much empathy for Lucy's victims that you almost have to remind yourself to feel sorry for her, and to be brutally honest, she spilled milk. In Love and Sacrifice, a widow called Philippa is involved with a man with a checkered past, who also cheats on her, with her daughter. Very much a character piece, although this story shows the imperfect nature of human beings as much as any of the others, it is somewhat more redemptive and won't leave you weeping for humanity. Then we have Pain, where we meet Ben, a man who literally cannot feel pain and therefore lacks empathy. This is extremely hard to imagine and makes the character hard to relate to or understand, but given this, Ashcroft does do a good job. Whether the central message that pain, emotional and physical, really is the fundamental basis of all humanity, good or bad, is true, it is certainly thought-provoking. To Trust the Sky is a very internal story and concerns a young heroin addict, Rachel, and her desire to join with the sky. A simple story of mental escape, it is all about the symbolism. And death. Finally, we have The Woman in Red, in which a woman who since childhood always sees a woman dressed in red during hard moments in her life narrates a story that could be said to be an analysis of the religious faith experience and, while by no means an easy ride, not quite the suicide pill ending either, and somehow an apposite end to this anthology. So, in conclusion then, I would give Alone 6 razor blades out of 10, The Curse gets 8, 7 razor blades for Family, Forgiveness deserves the full 10, for Green Eyes it's 6 again, for Home it's 5, Love and Sacrifice gets 9 blades, Pain and To Trust the Sky get 6 each, and finally, The Woman in Red garners 7. Beauty is Pain by James Ashcroft is available in paperback and as an ebook, links in the description. See you all on the next London After Midnight. Al.